everybody. Jeff Antoniuk here from Jazzwire. Welcome to Guided Listening. So this week, about 3 minutes ago, I didn't know what we were going to do, but there is like a full wall, ceiling to floor, of CDs. That's where a lot of my student loan money went all those years ago. I invested heavily in CDs. Not the right kind of CDs. Well, they were the right kind for a good long time. So I looked at this wall of CDs and was like, man, what haven't we checked out? What haven't I looked at recently? Paul Desmond. Yeah, let's get into some Paul Desmond. So this is an album of his called Take 10. And the band is it's Gene Cherico on bass, Connie Kay on drums, and Jim Hall on guitar. Here's the thing. Maybe I've listened to this in the last decade. Maybe once or something. I did check it out quite a bit back in the day as I was learning this song and trying to steal ideas and everything. So I'm interested in going back to it. As I recall, Connie Kay's playing brushes on it to begin with, for sure, in my mind, and maybe the whole way. So that's going to be interesting. A faster samba, but how to keep it light and relaxed. Jim Hall, one of the absolute masters on guitar. And one of the things I know about Jim, as different than many of the guitar players who were before him or his contemporaries, he would strum a fair amount, or that was part of his sound. I don't know about a fair amount. Strumming the guitar. Well, we all know that's the thing, strum the guitar, right? Like when you're sitting around a campfire, what do? You strum the guitar. That's not what jazz players typically do. So that's part of Jim's playing. And I think we hear some of that here. So I'm going to be really interested in this. I love Paul Desmond's playing, and I've never met anyone. Most jazz players are pretty generous, and they understand that even if that's not what I'm after, man, fantastic, right? With Dave Sanborn on one side of the spectrum, and Paul Desmond or something like that on the other side, like. To me, I love it all, and I'm not trying to sound like either of those guys, but geez, what fantastic players, right? So yeah, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone say anything other than, legend when they talk about Paul Desmond. I remember reading an old historic downbeat from whatever it was, 1954 or something, and the way I remember them asking Charlie Parker, like, of all these people out there, like all these great alto players you're influencing, who do you like the best? And he said Paul Desmond, which was surprising to the interviewer because that's like sort of the anti-Charlie Parker in a way. And he went on to say, like, yeah, that's why everybody's trying to kind of do the same thing. Like that dude's doing his own thing and it's beautiful. So interesting. I like that story. It's possibly true. I remember it. So if it's not true, it's not, fake news or AI generated. It's just my adult brain possibly not remembering. I'm pretty sure it's true. Somebody find that and post it. Which downbeat? I think it was downbeat. All right, let's listen to this thing. Paul Desmond, Connie Kay on the drums, Gene Cherico on bass, Jim Hall. This is Samba de Orfeu, which was from a movie that ended up winning, I think it was the Academy Award, Foreign Film of the Year. It's a cool movie. I've seen it a couple times. I think I actually bought it on DVD. Again, another one of those things that nobody knows what those are anymore. All right, here we go. Strumming, right? It's atypical. Drum. Can you hear a recurring rhythm that he's using? One, two, 1, 2, Cool. You know what? So let's talk about that. So on the brushes, even with sticks, but just on one surface, the snare drum. So he's playing brushes on the snare drum, and the angle of the brush or where he's hitting on the head. There's ways to get all these different sounds, and especially with brushes, to get the the swoosh and the slap and all that kind of stuff. Brushes are just, when you hear a drummer playing brushes, it's such a personal thing. So yeah, let's go back and see if you can notice that, and then the bass. And I think I was the bass line for a samba is 1 3 1 3 1 3 1, and so I think I was hearing dun 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 dun. So that was sort of the template I thought I heard, and then when I'd heard it 2 or 3 times, it would change a bit. So that's the crazy making thing about listening to jazz, is it's changing, but that's the cool thing, is that we have a groove, meaning repeated, literally the way you make a groove in the floor with a door that isn't hung properly, by it scraping over and over in the same place, repetition. So we get a groove, but then with jazz, it's also about how something breathes or has some personality, or over time might develop or have some personality injected. Those are opposites. Do the same thing over and over again, come hell or high water. Be yourself, do your own thing. And be too much of yourself, you've just screwed up the groove. Simply groove too much, and we could have just had a metronome playing, right? Groove too much, yeah. But in the context of jazz, right, there needs to be that interaction. You can't really groove too much, but you get the point I'm making. Let's start this thing from the top and kind of key into the bass and the drums, and then how Jim is kind of strumming over top of that. And there's a rhythm inside that strumming. It's not just random strings, right? So a little different than I sang the bass line. 1 3 1 and 1 3 1 and. That's more what he's doing. Yeah. And then, of course, Paul Desmond's just gorgeous sound floating over top. And he's being very dynamic, right? Like he's soft, but he's hitting notes and playing things very softly. So he's very dramatic and dynamic, but within his vibe. And that's the melody. Solos. I think Connie Kay maybe picked up a stick, and he may be playing with one stick and one brush, but not on the cymbal, all on the snare drum. Wow. What great lines from Paul Desmond. And his time is so perfect. It's so easy for a horn player to drag in a samba. It's going by fast. 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4. And he's just right on the time. Not ahead, not behind. I always love that little melodic thing he puts in there. In the middle of, these great bebop lines, arpeggiated lines, throws in just this beautiful little melody. All right. So a lot of chords behind his lines. It's really more of a chord solo, meaning almost every note has a chord under it. Since I said that, every note has a chord under it. Cool inner voices moving through there. And at the bridge, he busts out playing some lines. Last A section back to the chords. Hear Connie Kay's rhythm. melody, very short melody up. Little tang. So this is a board fade. Right, so we can tell that they weren't all just playing softer until they weren't putting any air in their instrument, or Jim Hall wasn't quite striking the string. They were playing, and someone just turned the volume down as they were playing. So at some point, the volume is off, they're still playing away, and the producer would say, all right, cut it, because they had already stopped recording. So yeah, that's kind of what happened on that ending. So yeah, and that was short, right? That was 4 minutes and 30 seconds, I think. So we had the melody in. Paul took, was it 2 choruses? Maybe it was 3, but it may have just been 2. Jim Hall took a chorus and a half. A-A-B-A is a chorus. He played 2 A sections. Paul Desmond came in on the bridge. He just jumped in on top of Jim's solo. Presumably that was worked out in the studio, or out of the corner of his eye, Jim saw, oh, Desmond's walking up. They soloed together for that bridge, which I thought was really cool. I love that cool jazz, cool school, improvising together counterpoint kind of thing. Fantastic. Both with those beautiful light sounds that work together so well. And then Paul Desmond took the melody out. And that makes sense because it's a long tune. The A sections are 16. So the song is 16, 16, 8 measure bridge, 16. That's a lot of measures. So to make this, to make the recording shorter, to make it work better on radio probably, they kind of thought about like, how can we, chop this down a little bit? And one of the ways is to not have the entire head played out. So I know every time I've been in the studio recording an album, this is a concern because it's easy for jazz musicians to make every song 18 minutes long. So how do we make things a little more concise for the studio? When I'm in a club, nobody notices that this song's been going on for 12 or 13 minutes. We're in the moment having fun with the musicians. On the radio, that works less well. Radio, that's a word from the 1900s. Okay. All right. Paul Desmond, so glad we listened to that. And I'm really wanting to go back and steal some more moments from Paul Desmond solo. I already did all those years ago. And then Jim Hall, and then hearing that great samba groove. So yeah, there's a lot there that I want to steal or get inside my playing. And not least of which was Paul Desmond's time, just how he was just so perfectly with the flow. You didn't get the sense that there was any technique going on there. A lot of people think Paul Desmond had no technique whatsoever because he played pretty. Not true. He had ridiculous technique to make it seem easy and pretty. When you hear somebody that seems like they're really kind of forcing and struggling, I love that sound too. You're hearing the force, and I do like hearing the force and the struggle in someone's sound and in what they're playing. But I'm just telling you, when it sounds kind of chilled out and easy and like nothing going on, that's harder to do. So to play like Stan Getz, or to play, so many examples, you're hearing an absolute beast of a technician play something like that. And just make it sound like falling off a log. So there we go. All right. Well, thank you for joining me for this one. And I'm glad I saw that CD, and I've got many more over there. So we're going to keep going with this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. And please join us inside Jazz Wire. Take a free trial.